How to have fun anytime, anywhere. Step 1. Go to ChumbaCasino.com.
ChumbaCasino.com. Got it.
Step 2. Collect your welcome bonus.
Come to Papa welcome bonus.
Step 3. Play hundreds of casino-style games for free.
That's a lot of games. All for free?
Step 4. Unleash your excitement.
Woohoo!
Chumba Casino has been delivering thrills for over a decade. So claim your free welcome bonus now and live the Chumba life. Visit ChumbaCasino.com.
No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. 21 plus. Terms and conditions apply.
Now, the Hunt Palmer Show.
Yes! I feel like I've been waiting for this my entire life.
You're listening to the Hunt Palmer Show on 104.5 ESPN Baton Rouge.
Jolly good fun. Jolly good.
Locking down the middle of the day.
America's favorite daytime fun show.
Live from the Mercedes-Benz of Baton Rouge studio. This is Hunt Palmer.
Hunt Palmer coming to you from Mercedes-Benz of Baton Rouge studio downtown in the capital city on this Tuesday. Hope the work week is off to a good start. Appreciate you hanging out with us here on 104.5 ESPN Baton Rouge. It is a full Tuesday here. Lots and lots to get to. Got Jacob Beck and Cassie Spazzali back there on the ones and twos. LSU baseball wins last night. Is Derek Carr tradable? We'll talk a little bit about that. Glen West, go 24/7, talking hoops and baseball with us in 30 minutes. I got to preview LSU in Tennessee tonight from the PMAC. Sharif Ishak talking all things Saints. So loads and loads to do over the next 2 hours. So lock us in here on 104.5 ESPN Baton Rouge. We start the same way we start each and every day with our Genesis opening drive.
It's time for Hunt's opening drive, presented by Genesis of Baton Rouge.
Tigers win last night over Nicholls. Jay Johnson was exceedingly happy with the way that LSU performed last night, and I think for good reason. In a 7-inning game, LSU scored 13 runs, got 10 hits. William Schmidt was really, really good. Maverick Rizzi did his job as well. I thought that for the most part, LSU was very, very good against a decent Nicholls team. And they came in 5-2. I wouldn't suggest they played the Dodgers, the Padres, and the Braves, but they came in winning some baseball games, and LSU took care of them with relative ease. I thought there were some real positives. Let's just start with William Schmidt, who got the ball in his first start as an LSU Tiger, and that went about as well as you could have hoped. LSU went into the game giving the ball to William Schmidt, not necessarily thinking in terms of innings. They were purely thinking in terms of pitch count. And I could see a situation where an amped-up young player tries to do a little bit too much in his first career start and jacks the pitch count up. And even though they wanted him to go 60 pitches, he only gets through 3 innings. That wasn't the case for William Schmidt. He cruised through the middle portion of his start and ended up getting almost through 5 innings at 60 pitches, 4 2/3. He hit 60 pitches on the nose. They got him out of there, and Jay Johnson was thrilled with that. Keep in mind, in the first inning, Nicholls gets a couple of hits right out of the chute. That can be unnerving. I mean, how often has William Schmidt given up a couple of hits right out of the chute in the last 5 years of his pitching life? I certainly don't think in a district game last year for Catholic, many times he opened the game with a pair of line drive hits. Like that hasn't happened to him very much. So for him to respond to that by getting a couple outs, and then you get a double play ball to Tanner Reeves at third base, and he kicks it, and you get no outs. Like that, all of that could be very unnerving to a freshman pitcher, and William Schmidt just got up there and threw strikes. He did not walk anyone in this game. 4 2/3 innings, no walks. That's huge. I don't know that his command was perfect. He did miss a little bit with the fastball. Yes, he threw 3 straight wild pitches with Aaron Beatty back there that played it a run, and that doesn't look great. But that's just a part of the outing. And to me, the entirety of the outing was really, really positive for William Schmidt. My favorite thing outside of responding to the adversity for Schmidt in the game was that he was able to throw his curveball for strikes like almost whenever he wanted to. And that's something that not all young pitchers do. A lot of times when you're in high school, especially if you throw as hard as Schmidt does, you don't really have to command your breaking ball. Kids just swing at it. And you can't do that in a showcase. You can't do that in fall ball against LSU, but you can rely on that your junior and senior year in high school, throwing it 90-plus miles an hour, up to 95 miles an hour as a senior. The location of your breaking ball isn't that important in terms of just winning that game. It is when you get up here. And he commanded it very, very well. I really liked what I saw from William Schmidt, really for the entirety of his outing. You move on offensively, and I thought the best thing about the offense was Jared Jones's night in totality. This is going to have to be Jared Jones's model every single game. And it's hard to mentally stick to, but what he did last night is exactly what LSU has to have him do. He drew 2 walks because teams are going to, generally speaking, try to steer clear of him. And you can't chase. You've got to accept the fact that you're going to walk some. And he walked twice. They made a mistake to him. He hit it into the bleachers. That's what he's got to do. When they make that mistake, hit it in the bleachers. He did. They made a better pitch to him with a runner in scoring position later in the game, and he lined it into right center field. Not trying to reach out and hook it, not trying to lift and launch everything. I mean, we know he can hit the ball to the ballpark to right field, but he didn't try to do that. He just hit a hard line drive back through the box for an RBI hit. And then his last swing of the night went 403 feet to dead center field and was dropped at the warning track, but it was a sac fly, and it was a run-scoring and positive at-bat. Every at-bat he had was really good. And I don't think he's going to hit 27, 28 home runs this year because I don't think teams are going to pitch to him enough to allow that to happen. If he does, great. But I don't think that's going to happen. I think he's more likely to hit 18 or 20. But if he walks and his on-base percentage is really high and he doesn't try to do too much and hits some line drives the other way, and then when they do make the mistake, drive it out of the ballpark, that is awesome to see. Speaking of awesome to see, Stephen Milam was great in the game last night. Jay Johnson mentioned in the postgame that Milam was a little shook up after Saturday. Keep in mind that when LSU made that comeback in game 1 of that doubleheader and scored 4 runs in the 9th and had the tying run at 3rd and had the winning run at 1st, and Milam popped up like that hurt him. And it's good that he cares that much. But he gets in there, goes to work, comes back out in the next opportunity, and he was good on Saturday evening, and he was really good in the game last night. Milam was 2 for 3. He drove in 5 runs. He hit that home run right-handed. He hit a line drive back through the box, left-handed for a single. Kind of did his thing from both sides of the plate, which I thought was really very good for him. Other things to look at as far as the offensive side goes, Chris Stanfield goes 2 for 4 in the game out of the 9-hole. He scored 2 runs, showed his speed. Ball got loose on the infield, and he turned that into a run-scoring play. Jay Johnson said after the game, I thought they might throw him out, and then I realized that Stanfield running out there, he does run exceptionally well, and he hasn't taken offense to not being in the leadoff spot for the last couple of games. He's just showed up and swung the bat, and he hit the ball very, very hard last night on a couple of different occasions, so I thought that was a very positive thing. This is kind of a big picture thing and not necessarily anything to do with last night, but Jay Johnson talked about this after the game. He likes the platoon of Ashton Larson and Ethan Fry. Maybe that's in right field, maybe that's in left field, maybe that's at DH. But last night, Larson starts the game at DH. He draws a walk, scores a run. Later on, Ethan Fry comes into the game. He gets a hit in 2 at-bats, goes 1 for 2. And he said this after the game, I feel like if you put Larson and Fry in advantageous situations for themselves in a platoon, that combination becomes a high-level player. He used the term All-American. I'm not going to quite go there yet. An All-American, that's high praise. But a solid everyday SEC player. And it's all rooted in, as a metaphor, the Moneyball thing, where it's we can't recreate X. In Moneyball's case, it's Jason Giambi. We can't recreate Giambi. We can't re-sign him. We can't bring in the guy who just does what Giambi does. But if we can bring in 4 guys who help us offset different parts of this, well, that helps. And I don't have access. Well, I guess I could go look, but it would take a long time, to what Ashton Larson hits against right-handed pitching versus what he does against left-handed pitching, and then do the same thing for Ethan Fry. It's possible that Fry, as a right-handed hitter, crushes left-handed pitching, and Larson struggles with it a little bit. You saw in Game 1, LSU's failed comeback on Saturday of the doubleheader. He was facing a tough left-hander, and he swung and missed that breaking ball out of the box. Maybe Ethan Fry gives you a better at-bat in that spot from the right side. and maybe good right-handed breaking balls eat Ethan Fry up, and Ashton Larson's really good against him. And if you've got those two guys at your disposal, and you can start one against this pitcher, but understand that this guy could come out of the bullpen, and you might need a pitch hit there. There are some moves in game, not necessarily in the starting lineup, but in game that you might be able to make. And one of those is with Fry and Larson. The other piece to this is third base. Last night, you saw Tanner Reeves, a left-handed hitter, start the game. Made the error in the first inning, but they like him offensively. Well, they go to a left-handed pitcher, Nicholls does. John Pearson gets in at bat. John Pearson hits the ball very, very hard. Michael Braswell goes in and plays defense for him. You saw three different guys man one position trying to get the best possible outcome against a right-handed starter, so Reeves is in, and then a left-handed reliever, so Pearson hits, and then you need defense with the lead, and Braswell plays. It's not going to go like that every game. You're not going to make multiple positional changes every single game with these wild platoons. But while you're trying to figure out what the best version of your team is, some of these things are good to look at. And I thought that those were two interesting pieces of it. Look at some of the stats that I pulled up for LouisianaSports.net. Nicholls was 0 for 9 with runners in scoring position in the game. LSU was 5 for 13. That's a 385 average with runners in scoring position. Even better, LSU with runners on base last night, 7 for 17. That is a 412 batting average. LSU scored 7 times in the game with 2 outs. That includes all 4 of the runs that LSU pushed across in the first inning. The first 2 players for LSU were retired in the first inning, and then they got things rolling thanks to a Jerry Jones walk. They scored 4 runs in that inning. So I thought LSU played well. It's good you win the game. It's good you run rule them. I think it's probably a good thing that LSU run ruled them so that they could save pitching, get on the bus, get on the plane, go to Dallas, and have as many bodies as fresh as possible to go for a week of travel and an uptick in competition this weekend. I think that's fair to say. So mission accomplished last night in a rare Monday night game against Nicholls. Tigers moved to 7-1, and they'll now turn their attention to Dallas Baptist coming up on Wednesday night. That's our Genesis opening drive. Glen West talking some LSU baseball and basketball in 15 minutes. When we come back, interesting stuff from Ross Jackson at LouisianaSports.net. Could the Saints possibly trade Derek Carr? He thinks so, and he's got some suitors. We'll talk about it next.
The Hunt Palmer Show.
Genesis of Baton Rouge. GenesisofBatonRouge.com is the website. Every car that is on the lot at Airline and PQ is online at GenesisofBatonRouge.com. When I say Genesis, you should think luxury vehicle. If you've never sat behind the wheel of a Genesis or in a Genesis, give it a try. You'll see the difference. And when you think luxury, don't just immediately turn it off and go, well, I can't afford a luxury vehicle. It's a luxury vehicle at a reasonable price. You don't know until you look. You can start that process at GenesisofBatonRouge.com, and you can further that process going to see one of their brand ambassadors at their gorgeous facility at Airline and PQ. Just walk around the lot. Take a look at their sedans. Take a look at the SUVs. They've got the entry level. They've got the highest end model. It's all right there on the lot. Maybe one of those fits you perfectly. You won't know unless you go check it out. So if you're on Airline Highway in the process of looking for a vehicle, just make one more stop. Stop off at Genesis of Baton Rouge and see what it's all about. It's Genesis of Baton Rouge. You can find them online at GenesisofBatonRouge.com.
You're listening to The Hunt Palmer Show on 104.5 ESPN, Baton Rouge.
Going to come hang out with us here in 15 minutes talking LSU basketball tonight against Tennessee and then some LSU baseball as well. So looking forward to that conversation. Sharif Ishak in an hour and 15 minutes as usual on Tuesdays. All right, let's talk about this. Let's talk about it. Is it possible for the Saints to trade Derek Carr? Now, when we discuss Derek Carr, I think most of the time the discussion goes one of two ways. Are the Saints going to restructure this deal like they always do, save some money? I mean, you have to basically restructure Derek Carr's deal to get compliant with the cap. Are you going to do that and try to figure that out with the numbers, or are you just going to cut him? And there are positives to both of those arguments. The positive to having him play is that all that money that you're tying up, whether he's on the team or not, is actually being used on the field. That's a positive. If you cut him, you're going to save a little bit of money, and you realize that the organization is moving in a very direct path away from Carr towards something else in the future. And I think we can all agree that that is a positive as well. Either one of those has its positives one way or another. You probably, as a fan of the Saints or someone who follows the team, like, you probably have a preferred path, but both of them have their merits. I think the best of both worlds is a potential trade. And it may be pie in the sky. I get it. But let's just discuss it for the sake of the situation.
Looking for excitement? Chumba Casino is here. Play anytime, play anywhere. Play on the train, play at the store, play at home, play when you're bored. Play today for your chance to win and get daily bonuses when you log in. So what are you waiting for? Don't delay. Chumba Casino is free to play.
Experience social gameplay like never before. Go to Chumba Casino right now to play hundreds of games, including online slots, bingo, Slingo, and more. Live the Chumba life at ChumbaCasino.com.
No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. 21 plus. Terms and conditions apply.
There is reportedly, and this is according to Albert Breer of SI, a host of teams that are now interested in making a move for Matthew Stafford from the Rams. Breer reports the Browns, Raiders, Giants, and Steelers have all shown interest in making a move for Matt Stafford. And I can argue that, like, Matt Stafford and Derek Carr are not worlds apart at this point in time. Carr's a little bit younger. He doesn't have a Super Bowl ring. He hasn't thrown for as many yards. But I would say both of those two guys at this point in their careers are proven, functional quarterbacks in the NFL. Do I think either one of them are going to win the MVP next year? No. And I know there are a lot of Saints fans that just do not like Derek Carr at all. But it's not like he's been atrocious in New Orleans. He's not. And I know that Matt talks about the Emperor of Empty Yards on his show, and there's certainly some merit to that. There are times where Derek Carr has slung it around and racked up yards when it wasn't all that important, and the wins did not necessarily follow. But he played 17 games 2 years ago, if that's how we want to term that, 2023, 2 years ago. And he threw 25 touchdowns against 8 interceptions. He completed 68% of his throws. Like, he was okay. This past year, he was hurt and he missed time. But in 10 games, the Saints were 5-5. With a massive amount of injuries on offense and some on defense. He threw 15 touchdowns against 5 picks. He completed 68% of his throws. Like, he is functional as a quarterback. The Saints cannot use Derek Carr in 2025 to further their organization, in my opinion. That's my opinion. I don't think the roster is good enough that Derek Carr at quarterback is going to propel them to win the division and win a playoff game and be a threat to make an NFC title game. I think we can probably agree that we're all on the same page there. But if you have a functional roster, or you think you do, and you're just a quarterback away, which is why you would move for Matt Stafford, Derek Carr is not the worst second option. They're not that different. So if these teams consider themselves, I mean, I'm not talking about the Raiders, who are clearly not going to take him back, but if the Steelers and that defense feel like Carr's an upgrade over what they had last year, which is a young guy who's never won anything and an old guy who people don't really like to be around all that much. Maybe the Jets, who move on from Rodgers, who think they've got a great defense as well and some good skill position players, maybe they want to try that again. I'm not saying it's likely, but man, would it be awesome. Because if the Saints could move on from Carr, one, they might get something of an asset for him. And two, you would save over $11 million in salary. So that's an ideal world. That's a dream world. That's a utopia if it could happen. And the reason I'm not completely ruling it out is just because over the course of the last 10 years, I have just watched so many NFL teams do things that I deem to be fairly irrational for that one position on the field. Whether it's the draft, whether it's free agency, whether it's trades, whether it's signing guys past their prime, whether it's trying once again to go off of a potential that's not realized. Not every situation's the same, but you would have to agree that a lot of organizations do a lot of things that make you scratch your head a little bit because you're dealing with the quarterback. And again, to reiterate before we go one step deeper into this, I know that Saints fans think Derek Carr is atrocious. I'm telling you that he's not atrocious. He's just not the right fit for New Orleans right now. I think if you take Drew Brees off one of those late teams in his career and plug Derek Carr in there, the Saints are probably still a threat. They're not as good, but there's probably still a threat. This roster, he's no use to you. He's not good enough to elevate this roster. I don't know if anybody is, but he's not good enough to elevate this roster. That's different than how he fits somewhere else. So I'm just telling you, if everybody's beating down the door or at least knocking on it for Matt Stafford, they may show up for Derek Carr too, willing to give less assets. So the good news is, for the sake of this discussion, it's not something we have to really think about for a long time. We don't have to question whether or not this is realistic for months. This has to happen before March 14th. It has to happen in the next 20 days. Because at that point, $30 million of his base salary becomes guaranteed. That's the third day of the league year. So once that happens, we don't have to have the discussion because nobody's knocking on the door for that. But if you can start to exchange assets, see who's taking what portion of what money, and start to work together, I'm not telling you it's impossible. The Saints have had a lot of bad breaks. The best coach in the history of the franchise decided he was done. And then you thought you had a good team last year for 2 weeks and everybody got hurt. And everybody got hurt the year before that. And in Breeze's final year was COVID and you couldn't be in the dome. Like, there have been a lot of things that have gone wrong for the Saints. Maybe, just maybe, it's about that time that one big thing goes right. And I'm not suggesting they would get some kind of king's ransom for Derek Carr. Quite the opposite, in fact. But just taking a few bucks off the books, taking him and that question out of your hands at this point, and just moving forward with a full understanding that whether it's Spencer Rattler or whether it's some aging veteran or whether it's a draft pick that you want to make early in this draft, like, just the understanding that you're moving on and moving forward is a step in the right direction to me. We're talking baby steps here for the Saints. For too long, they have looked at this as, what's that one next move we can make to get there? What's the one next move we can make? And now we all know you're not one move away from getting there. You're a lot of baby steps away from even being close. Maybe this could be a stroke of good fortune for New Orleans, that they take a baby step away from Derek Carr towards the future because someone thinks they're closer to winning than the Saints are. That would be my sincere hope in this whole deal. If you want to read more about this, you can at LouisianaSports.net. Ross Jackson's got the piece up. Again, he mentions the Browns, the Giants, the Steelers, and the Jets among teams that could be interested over the next 20 days. Man, would that be an awesome start to the Kellen Moore era if they could not only move on from Derek Carr, but get some assets back for it, or an asset back for it, while helping financially. Maybe a pipe dream. Maybe it's just pie in the sky here, but I'm hopeful that the Saints can potentially get that done. If you're looking for Saints content, you can find ours, Hunt on Saints, or on YouTube or wherever you find your podcasts. You can Hunt on Saints. If you like, subscribe, rate, and review all Saints all year round. Also, LouisianaSports.net. Ross Jackson does an awesome job of keeping up with the Saints, and he just pulled into Indianapolis as we speak here, so he's going to have coverage from the Combine all week long for LouisianaSports.net, and, of course, his podcast, Locked On Saints. So give him a follow and go ahead and take in all that content as the NFL calendar just never truly stops at this point. We'll take a time out when we come back. Glen West talking Tigers next.
The Hunt Palmer Show.
One Bath and Closets. OneBathAndClosets.com is the website. David Duvall and his team, 30 years redesigning and remodeling bathrooms and closets. Now, we always talk about whether or not you just want to upgrade. If you want to upgrade, and that's kind of a luxury to have, but sometimes you have to, because you've got some damage that is being done, some irreparable damage because your house is a little bit older, or there's been a leak, or some pipes have ruptured, and you've got to change. Well, David Vaughn and his team can do that. He's got a master plumber right there with One Bath and Closets, and then he can come in, and in the course of that repair and replacement, in this case, you can go ahead and do a little bit of a renovation as well. David Vaughn and his team are happy to do it. If that sounds a little bit overwhelming, let him walk you through the process step by step. Let him tell you about their financing options. We're talking about 18 months, 0%, same as cash, if you qualify for it. That makes things a little bit more palatable. It's One Bath and Closets. Check out the website, onebathandclosets.com. You can see pictures of their great work. You can see testimonials from their satisfied customers. You can start your process today with a phone call to One Bath and Closets to start that free consultation. It's David Vaughn and his team at One Bath and Closets. You can find them online at onebathandclosets.com.
This is the Hunt Palmer Show on 104.5 ESPN, Baton Rouge.
.104.5 ESPN, Baton Rouge, and Citizens Bank and Trust want to help cover your car payments. It's a $5,000 grand prize with a bonus chance to win free car washes from Benny's Car Wash for 6 months. We're also letting you earn extra entries by subscribing to our LouisianaSports.net daily newsletter. To sign up, visit 1045ESPN.com.
All right, we're going to talk some Tigers. Glen West, our senior writer over at Go 24/7. Got your team coverage and your recruiting coverage of the Tigers all year round over there, and he's with us every single Tuesday. Joins us now. Glen, how we doing?
It is Ryan Seacrest here. There was a recent social media trend which consisted of flying on a plane with no music, no movies, no entertainment. But a better trend would be going to ChumbaCasino.com. It's like having a mini social casino in your pocket. Chumba Casino has over 100 online casino-style games, all absolutely free. It's the most fun you can have online and on a plane. So grab your free welcome bonus now at ChumbaCasino.com. Sponsored by Chumba Casino.
No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. 21 plus. Terms and conditions apply.
Doing great, Hunt. How about yourself?
Doing quite well. Let's talk baseball first. We'll talk LSU and Tennessee hoops after that. Tigers lose their first contest over the weekend, but take 2 of 3. Beat a pretty scrappy Nicholls team last night handily, and then they'll head to Dallas. So do you have any major takeaways from the weekend that was? The offense went in the deep freeze there for about 10 innings.
Yeah, it was not a good look offensively for about 8 or 9 innings. I mean, when you're getting no hit at your own building and you're looking up stats from 50 years ago as the last time LSU got no hit at home, I mean, that's not a good place to be in. But I'm not overly concerned. I think just because of the way they bounced back in those next 2 games, I thought they were really, inside of their plan as opposed to being outside of their plan. That was something that Jay Johnson talked about a lot Saturday after that doubleheader, is that they just got completely out of their plan, and that he kind of knew what to fix, and you saw that in Game 3, and certainly against Nicholls. LSU had a really nice couple games there offensively. I thought it was really important that Stephen Milam and Jared Jones seemed to be swinging the bat really well as they kind of head to Frisco here for this long 5-6 day stretch of baseball. So when your 2 best players are hitting the ball and having some confidence here going into a pretty interesting week, I guess, from a non-conference perspective, that's really good. And then from a pitching perspective, I mean, outside of 1 inning there in Game 2 on Saturday, I thought that, again, this pitching staff has been all over the strike zone. They've done a really nice job of keeping teams off base via the free pass. That was a huge issue last year early in the season. And so the fact that they're throwing this many strikes and that this many guys are getting worked into the rotation early, and that you're seeing that consistency across the board, I think is a really good sign for this group.
I'm curious your thoughts on the platoons that we're seeing, not so much at catcher, because you got to play 2 catchers, but with Larson and Fry, then at third base with Reeves and Braswell. And as he kind of manipulates that, how do you think that is going to shake out?
Yeah, it's very much open season right now, I think, for those spots. I mean, even in that Saturday Game 2, we got to the ballpark, and I was a little surprised that Chris Stanfield wasn't in the lineup card after starting the first 5 games of the season. So I think that there's a lot open in terms of how they're going to handle right field and DH in particular. Tanner Reeves, I think, was somebody that I had kind of my eye on from a distance, just because I'd seen him swing the bat well in the fall and in the spring, and I thought could give some competition there to Braswell over at third base. But I think ultimately, Braswell is a seasoned veteran. He's gonna get it going at the plate, and hadn't made any errors over at third base, so it's not like he's kicking the ball around like he did a little bit early in the year last year. So I think, just give Braswell some time and he'll get it together like he did at the end of last year. But I'm endlessly curious about what they do from a matchup perspective in right field. I think really right now the only guy that you can pencil in every day in the outfield is Derek Curiel, which is interesting, and also opens up a world of possibilities that LSU can go in for those other 2 spots. So I'm kind of dancing around your question there in terms of the outfield and DH, but it's just because we've seen so many guys get so many opportunities here, and I don't know that they're any closer to figuring that out as we go into week 3.
Beauty of a baseball season. It's just kind of a long and winding road, and there are storylines that emerge almost every single week. Cade Anderson, I don't know if you picked up on the same thing I did, but did not seem to be in a very good mood Friday in his press conference after he got pulled in the 6th inning there. And then maybe I'm reading too much into this, but I said it on my show, and I'll see your thoughts on it. I noticed Jay Johnson's face when he talked about Cade Anderson and how he would pitch in Frisco this coming Friday, and he had this smirk about him like, I think he's ticked, and I think he's going to be awesome on Friday. And that's kind of what I pulled from that press conference in person. I'm curious if you saw the same thing.
I can't say I saw the same thing on Jay's face, but I'll echo your sentiments. Anderson was not a pitcher that sounded like he was very pleased with his performance after his game last Friday. He I think has the utmost confidence in his ability. And I think that's just what you want to see out of a Friday night guy, somebody that's going to be steady and has that calm demeanor. I mean, we've written about him a bunch over at our site here early in the first couple weeks of the season. I mean, outside of his 6th inning there on Friday, it's been exemplary pitching and just really locating all of his pitches, the slider, the changeup, curveball, the fastball, whatever he wants. And I think one of the things that Koki Riley, who actually works the Advocate, pointed out to me is that when you're throwing your fastball for strikes at 92, 93 miles an hour and guys aren't swinging at it, it's because they're just guessing at what you're throwing. And I think Cade Anderson is an exemplary example of that. Just a guy that you don't know what pitch is coming next. And even if it's not the most overpowering stuff at 97, 98, like you get with the Chase Shores, he's going to locate his pitches and he's going to make you think about what's coming next. I think that's a really good player to have in that position to start the weekends.
Not talking about Nate Yeske, not talking about Jay Johnson, talking about Glen West. If you had 3 outs and everybody was fresh, you had to get 3 outs with one guy, who would you give the ball to on LSU staff right now?
I mean, we haven't seen Gavin Guidry yet, and I would probably lean towards him just from a veteran perspective, but I've been so impressed by what we've seen from Kason Evans, and it's only been 2 performances, but I mean, he's throwing 96, 97 in the freezing cold, and we're not even, we're very, very much in the infancy of this season so far, and he's not only just throwing the fastball for strikes, but he's mixing in his slider, which goes 85, 86 for strikes as well. So, I mean, it's hard to say not to say Kason Evans. I think he has 9 strikeouts in the 13 or 14 batters he's faced. He's been dominant at the end of games so far, and very much by design. I think he was the one that closed one of those games in each of the first 2 weekends, and I think he's going to be put in several spots this week to potentially do the same. I mean, I think they really think they've found something with him early in the season, and now for really all these guys, the pitchers, the position players, this is kind of a weekend here where you play Dallas Baptist, you play Sam Houston, who was a tournament team a couple of years ago. You're playing a number of really solid teams this weekend. You're really going to get a chance to see what these guys are like, I think, in some high-pressure situations on the road.
Should be very, very interesting. We'll start it up tomorrow in Arlington when LSU plays DBU at Globe Life. Tigers on the hardwood tonight in the PMAC against another top 10 team, Tennessee Volunteers, coming in, I think, ranked number 5 in the country. Team that plays really good defense. How does LSU score some points tonight?
Yeah, your guess is as good as mine in terms of scoring. But I think the one thing that I will say is that, yes, Tennessee's defense is kind of otherworldly at times. I will say their offense has been a detriment to them, and that's been kind of a consistent theme throughout the last several years as to why they haven't really made a deep run in the tournament. So if LSU can make this a messy offensive game, limit the second chance opportunities for Tennessee and get, one shot and done off the rim, I think that would be the ideal scenario for LSU to kind of hang around for as long as they can. But it's really going to come down to, can they make shots? Can they make contested shots at the rim? And we haven't seen that enough consistently to believe that they'll be able to do it. But they are at home. They have shown that they can play with some of these top end teams for long stretches. I mean, they were right there with Florida in the 5 minute mark and just let it completely get out of hand. Can they do it again in their own building? We'll see. Obviously you're not going to go in expecting them to upset the number 5 team in the country, but I think there are some pathways here to where they can stay competitive in this game for a long stretch. It's just, do they have the guys to be able to compete for a full 40 minutes? And I just don't have that full belief right now.
How have they cut their turnovers just about in half? I mean, they haven't had a bad turnover game in 3 weeks.
Yeah, I think a lot of it has to do with the fact they're rolling out that 4-guard lineup. I asked McMahon that question yesterday in his press conference before tonight's game, and he really kind of leaned and harbored on the fact that they've started Curtis Givens, that he's done a really nice job of playing a good floor game for them and not turning the ball over in the half court. You've got Victorious Miller out there. You've got Cam Carter and Jai Bailey. Those are guys that are I think growing more and more comfortable throughout the season as they get more opportunities. And the one guy we haven't seen a whole lot of, and I hate to keep harping on him a little bit, but Jordan Sears, one of your best scorers on this team. He's only playing 8 to 10 minutes these last couple of games, and I think a lot of it has to do with the fact he's struggled with turnovers. So, I think the fact that they've kind of leaned into this grouping with the 4-guard lineups, they're subbing in, Damian Collins and Corey Chest, and different guys are getting opportunities in the front court. But I think you really got to go back to that 4-guard lineup and the fact that all of them are handling the ball a little bit better and just making better decisions throughout the course of the game.
What about Robert Miller? What kind of chance do you give him to have a big game tonight? He's played much better over the last 3 weeks. We didn't really see him at all in December.
Yeah, I left the most important guy out there in that front court that I was just talking about. I mean, he's been great. I mean, going back to that, I believe it was at Arkansas was when he really first blossomed there with that road performance. It was in a loss, but you could just tell he was growing more and more comfortable finishing around the rim in the post. And he was a big central focus of conversation yesterday with McMahon. He just talked about how much confidence he's playing with around the rim and how he's put on about 20 pounds since he's got here of good muscle, and he's throwing his weight around a little bit more down there in the paint. And he's a good screener. He's a good cutter to the basket, and especially those top of the key situations where those guards are coming off screens and they're looking for him. And he's been ready the last couple games to finish, and he's even kicked and popped a few threes in that game on Saturday. I'd like to see a little bit more of that continue to be a part of his game that he's working in, but he's somebody that I think absolutely has to be a part of your future here if you want to have a program that you can build and get to being more competitive. And it's been really nice to see him come along these last couple weeks offensively. There's still a lot of work to do defensively with everyone on this roster, but I think the way that he's come along offensively gives you a lot of good hope if you're able to retain him for next year.
How do you expect the crowd to be tonight?
It is Ryan Seacrest here. There was a recent social media trend which consisted of flying on a plane with no music, no movies, no entertainment. But a better trend would be going to ChumbaCasino.com. It's like having a mini social casino in your pocket. Chumba Casino has over 100 online casino-style games, all absolutely free. It's the most fun you can have online and on a plane. So grab your free welcome bonus now at ChumbaCasino.com. Sponsored by Chumba Casino.
No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. 21 plus. Terms and conditions apply.
We'll see. I mean, I don't know if many have seen, but they're handing out some pretty clean jerseys. And they gave us a couple samples yesterday of what the students are going to be getting. I think they're handing out 1,000 of those. So you hope the student section shows up a little bit. But there wasn't a very big crowd for the Florida game. And I know LSU's in a really tough spot right now record-wise, but Florida's still a number 2 team in the country, and usually when you're playing those top end teams, good or bad, you'd expect or hope that the fan base would show up. But we'll see. I honestly don't have great expectations for what the crowds look like the rest of the year. But all you can really do if you're LSU is just control what you can control, which is the product you're putting on the court.
They keep getting these 8 o'clock midweek starts. It's just a tough way to draw a crowd when you got 3 league wins. But we'll see. Enjoy the basketball tonight, Glenn. We'll talk next week.
All right. Thanks, Hunt. Appreciate it.
Glen West, Go 24/7. All your team coverage, recruiting coverage. They got you covered over there at Go 24/7. Yeah, I mean, I can't imagine. I wrote this in my preview piece at LouisianaSports.net. Like, I think it'll be half full. Like, it just 8 o'clock on a school night on a Tuesday when you're 3 and whatever and you're a 10-point dog. I just have a hard time thinking you're going to get a lot of folks in there. However, and I'll talk about this in 15 minutes when I do my game preview, it's a bit of a sandwich spot for Tennessee. They went on the road to College Station on Saturday. Alabama comes to them on Saturday, so that's 2 massive games for them. Then you're going to walk in there on a Tuesday night at 8 o'clock p.m. and a half-full PMAC against a team that's got 3 league wins. Like, is that going to bring your best effort out? We'll see. Could be a bit of a sandwich spot here for the Vols, LSU and Tennessee tonight at 8 o'clock. You want to listen to it, you can on our sister station, Eagle 98.1, pregame at 7:30. Chris Blair and John Brady will be on the call. We'll come back and close out hour number 1 next.
The Hunt Palmer Show.
Highland Insurance Group, HighlandIG.com is that website. Jonathan Carbo and his team, they pride themselves on their expertise when it comes to dissecting policies. They can audit yours for free, give you a look at what your policy does and what it doesn't do. I'll tell you the story. This is just one of the easier stories to tell, so I don't have to speak too much insurance-ese here, though I'm still fairly fluent in insurance-ese after 7 years as a business. Like, they had a potential client come in. They had a general liability policy. It was over 5 locations for $1 million, which is fairly standard. They were able to write that program with $1 million at each location, so $5 million total in the aggregate for the same premium. That's the kind of expertise they can bring you because they know what markets like which classes of business, and they can make sure that your commercial insurance is placed with the right market. They're an independent broker. It means they've got contracts with dozens of different markets. They can make sure that you are taken care of the proper way. They're not a silver bullet. Don't call Jonathan Carver and his team and say, hey, my insurance renewal is massively overpriced. I would really like to cut 20% off this. They probably can't do that. They can try, but they probably can't do that. What they can do is make sure that your insurance is placed properly and that it's going to respond properly in the event that there's something that goes wrong. That's what insurance is designed to do, and that's what they'll help you with at the Highland Insurance Group. You can find them online at HighlandIG.com. That's the Highland Insurance Group.
You're listening to The Hunt Palmer Show on 104.5 ESPN, Baton Rouge.
So the Spurs are in the Smoothie King Center tonight to take on the Pelicans. We don't talk a ton of Pelicans on this show because, well, not a lot of people want to talk about the Pelicans at this point. They don't win a lot of games. Tonight, Chris Paul comes back to New Orleans for what theoretically could be his final game in uniform in that building. We know there's a history there from the Hornets to the Pelicans, and that Chris Paul took this franchise to its greatest heights in New Orleans. And we know that there is a fractured relationship there with a lot of the fan base. Now, I don't speak to this very emotionally, but I have told y'all, like, I still harbor ill will towards Nick Mingione for yelling foul ball or I got it at a pop-up like 13 years ago, okay? So I understand how competition can breed animus and how you can feel like you were scorned and that Chris Paul demanded out and he didn't want to be in New Orleans and all of those things. And I understand if there are some Pelicans fans, New Orleans folks, that just are going to resent Chris Paul forever. Like, I get it. Matt Moscona's got a column up at LouisianaSports.net right now, and it talks about some of the quotes that Chris Paul gave Ryan Clark on The Pivot in a podcast that's a year or so old, where he said, look, I didn't know if the Pelicans or the Hornets were even going to stay in New Orleans. I didn't know if the franchise was going to be there, or if it was going to be half San Antonio, half Oklahoma City. I didn't know what the future of the franchise was, and that you don't have an owner, and then you've got a situation where the league is vetoing or accepting trades, and it wasn't functioning like the other organizations in the sport. And he's got a point there. Now, I can't speak to the exact specifics of that. I don't know exactly who was calling those shots or who knew what. Or,
that was David Stern.
But I don't know exactly what those conversations are like.
No.
For me to be adamant and bang the table here, I need to know who knew what and what was being said and who's making decisions. I very, very fully remember David Stern was in the middle of all this and he's vetoing this trade and accepting this trade. Like, I get that whole thing, but like, I don't have enough information from that. Now I can listen to what Chris Paul says, but that can be a he said, she said too. But I do think that Chris Paul has admiration for the city of New Orleans. I think he enjoyed his time in New Orleans based on what he has said. And I know that was the best run we've seen from that franchise in this city. And I think he'll get booed tonight. And I think that is okay if misguided. It just is what it is. The people feel the way they're going to feel, and it's a prideful city that's not going to take well when the biggest stars on its basketball team ask out of town. And so I get it, but I feel like enough time has probably passed where it might be time one time as he's about to be on his way out to say, hey, thanks. And I don't know if that time ever comes. Do you think they ever retire his number back?
I think they probably will. They probably should.
Should they boo him tonight?
I'm kind of in the same boat as you, where I can't tell. I'm a fan of the Hornets. I mean, and Pelicans. I went to the Western Conference semifinals and they played the Spurs and it was awesome. They won the game I went to. They won, and so I've been a fan, since I was a kid. But I can understand people booing him. I don't boo anybody really. I'm not going to boo a player really. I understand why people would. I don't particularly like Chris Paul. Also, not because of what happened, not just of what happened with New Orleans, but also just because the way he's handled himself on the court a lot. I just don't really think he's a really high. He's a good player, but I just don't like the way he handles himself on the court. But anyways, a
lot of flopping and complaining. And
he just. So after he left, and then just the way his career's turned out. I'm not a fan, and I wouldn't boo him, but I totally understand why people would, because he did leave. After just when the team, look, you want your players to stand by the team.
I get that. I just gave you my example. It's ridiculous that I hold ill will toward Nick Mangione. Ridiculous. Jay Johnson, who I love, who's awesome. It's one of his best friends. Yeah. And I hate the guy because of one thing he did, one decision he made a decade ago. It's stupid, but it's sports, and here it is. And so I get, and especially, and that's not even a guy that was on my team, just a guy that was working against my team, and it's a completely different deal. But the point is, I understand grudges. Yeah. And I held one against Nick Saban for almost 2 decades. It is what it is. I don't know that Chris Paul has tormented the city of New Orleans the way Nick Saban tormented the city of Baton Rouge he left.
Not really.
But I understand that, and so we'll see kind of what the reaction is like tonight. If you'd like to read Matt's opinion piece, it's up at LouisianaSports.net. He says that it's time to mend fences with CP3, and we'll see if the day comes where that does happen, and they put his number up in the rafter show. We'll see. That's it for hour number 1. If you missed any of it, catch it on demand wherever you find your sound. Just search Hunt Palmer Show. We'll come back and preview LSU in Tennessee. Still got to talk Saints with Sharif Ishak as well. Come back after Sports Center, Tuesday edition of the Hunt Palmer Show.
The Hunt Palmer Show.
It is Ryan Seacrest here. There was a recent social media trend which consisted of flying on a plane with no music, no movies, no entertainment. But a better trend would be going to ChumbaCasino.com. It's like having a mini social casino in your pocket. Chumba Casino has over 100 online casino-style games, all absolutely free. It's the most fun you can have online and on a plane. So grab your free welcome bonus now at ChumbaCasino.com. Sponsored by Chumba Casino.
No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. 21 plus. Terms and conditions apply.